Welcome, everyone. Tonight, we have a presentation, Mastering Motivation. It is presented by Nick Rizzi and Austin Bristow, and I am going to turn it over to both of you.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. I'm going to go ahead. I'll get my screen shared and we'll kick it off with Austin to start. Tonight, we've got Mastering Motivation for you.
Absolutely. And we are, I think, both extremely excited to be here. One thing we do want to do, though, both Nick and I, whenever we start presentations, especially in this context being fraternity brothers, we prefer to make them more conversations than just like us talking to you. I know whenever I join a webinar and I'm trying to do some sort of professional development, I always want to make sure that I'm truly going to get something out of it. Like you all are investing an hour of your time tonight. So what we would like to start off with, especially since we do have a little bit smaller group, you don't have to come on video by any means. It's usually easier if you at least want to take your mic off mute. We would love to go around the horn and have you answer at least one, maybe both of the questions on the screen if you're comfortable with it, just to give us an idea of like, why are you here? Are you in some particular situation where this feels applicable to what you're going through? What is it that you wanted to get out of this, so that as we're talking through our presentation, we can make sure that we try to tailor some of the topics we're talking about, or maybe some of the examples, make sure that we really keep that thing you're looking for in the back of our minds, so that when you get done, you're like, well, they didn't even cover the thing I was hoping that they would cover. Not that we're going to go and just like make up answers to something that you guys say. But if you wouldn't mind, I don't know if you want to, Molly, I know we kind of started a little conversation already. I don't know if you want to jump in and go first, and I'll call out the other names that I'm seeing here in the participant box on the right side of the screen.
And I'm going to add them in the chat, but tonight's session is things that we've polled, that we've experienced, utilized ourselves. But what works for Austin, what works for myself may not work for you. And it's not going to be specific to us, but we want to make sure that we're hitting exactly like Austin said, the situation that you're in. So we'd love to make this as engaging as possible. If you've got questions along the way, feel free to raise your hand or put in the chat or even come off mute during the presentation. Like, we are totally okay with that, especially with this group size. This does not have to be that formal.
Agreed.
Yeah, so I can go. So I'm just hoping to get out ways, because sometimes I feel like motivation personally and professionally, it's hard sometimes after you can't do stuff. So just different ways to help motivate me. And like right now, just struggling with sometimes at work being motivated, because being back in the office is not fun. But then personally also struggling with motivation to actually want to go to the gym when I really don't want to.
You're not, we have an example. We'll talk about that. Maybe it'll work for you. Good to know.
And also, I'm going to put them in the chat too, if that helps.
Yeah, thank you. I will call on Kenneth. Do you go by Kenneth or Ken?
Just Kenneth.
Ken, cool.
For me, when I think about motivation, I think of it as a blessing, to be honest. Just because, like, as humans, we go through so much adversity, no matter if we recognize it or not. And sometimes, like, to me, that adversity helps us to be motivated to, do the right things in life.
Absolutely.
I like that. Blessing
Daniel?
of motivation. I love that.
Yeah. Great perspective. Daniel, is there anything you're hoping to get out of this, or anything specific you want us to try to touch on?
I think for myself, maybe how to motivate yourself personally, but also how to maybe motivate a group or other people whether you're working with, because they might have, a different agenda or something that they're trying to get out of. So how do you kind of motivate other people to kind of go into the same direction you'd want to go to?
Love it.
I love that. That's arguably one of the best skills you could learn in life too, especially as leaders.
Yes. Jamie, how's it going? Would you mind going next if you want to chime in?
Sure. I don't have any specific expectations. I'm always open to learn more and see what I can pick up from some experts such as yourselves.
Thank you very much.
Jamie, this is awkward because one of the slides is literally just stand in Jamie Ball's presence and you'll be motivated. So if you're learning from us, oh no.
You're hilarious, especially because right now, the reason I don't even have my camera on is I'm literally laying down on the couch. And I have rolled over to hit the microphone button. And I'm like, should I at least sit up? And I'm like, no, I'm so tired right now and I have a headache. So can't even be motivated to sit up. But I adore you, Nick. Thank you.
Nothing wrong with that. Shannon, anything you wanted to add that might not have been said?
Yeah, well, I definitely relate to the motivation of myself, and trying to motivate myself to go to the gym is definitely one of the things. But also, so I guess motivation work-wise, I've been trying to find a new job, but the job search process in itself is hard and difficult. So trying to motivate myself through that and push myself, because I know, getting a new job will be worth it. So motivation for that.
Nick, I feel like that's your wheelhouse. Didn't you have like 13 job offers at one point?
I did. And I just got rejected during the pandemic 49 times. So I would love to talk about that.
Let's have a conversation, folks. This is what we're here for.
Heck yeah.
Andrew, would you mind, I don't know if you want to share anything or chime in, and then we'll finish up with Alyssa. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, sure. So I guess like what I want to get motivated, I'm pretty sure this was already said previously, was just like how to like motivate a group better. I feel like as someone like with a leadership position, I don't feel like my skills in motivating other people are like the greatest. So I feel like that's something I definitely want to get out of it. And in terms of what I'm struggling with in regards to motivation, I would say just like keeping a consistent schedule. But I think that's one of my resolutions of the year, is trying to be like consistent, whether that be like consistent sleep, gym, eating, etc. And I guess like with online schooling, it's kind of hard to find that motivation to kind of keep at that.
Sure.
I love that. Alyssa, anything you want to add? I know you're coming in a little bit, so we are just talking about what do you want to get out of this, or if there's any specific questions you've got. And it's also very open as a reminder. If anybody wants to add anything as we go, you're more than welcome to. Okay, no worries. We might come back to that. Austin, I'm going to keep this train moving then.
Absolutely, please do. So I'm kind of already got my name there on the bottom of the screen if you see my face. My name is Austin Bristow. I am a proud graduate of Indiana University in Bloomington. Don't know if there's any other Hoosiers on the call. I don't think there's a Delta Sig chapter at Purdue, thankfully, because tonight IU and Purdue are playing in basketball. So I'm going to be able to check out that final score as the webinar wraps up tonight. So I'm hoping IU holds on to the lead they have before I signed on. I was an Alpha Pi chapter, spring 07. I'm currently a business intelligence manager for a company called Fairlife. We make milk. So with that, I use a software program called Power BI from Microsoft, and it's basically all visualization of data. I also have a public speaking business on the side, which is part of why I'm excited to be here tonight, because this is something that I absolutely love to do in terms of sharing knowledge, having meaningful conversations about personal and professional development, because that is really the wheelhouse that I love to share in terms of topics. When it comes to motivation itself, just like why do I don't think I'm motivated, or what's my experience with motivation, to give you some background of where I've come from. I graduated with a double major in marketing and entrepreneurship. We'll touch a little bit on my entrepreneurship class, which to me was a primary example of staying motivated at school with big projects. IU has one of the top, if not the top ranked entrepreneurship program in the country called the Spine Sweat Experience, which we'll get into. At the same time, while I was in college, I rode Little 500, which is an intramural bike race on a cinder track. Like, it's crazy. You train for an entire year for a one-day race. It's bonkers. I was on IU Dance Marathon's leadership committee as the director of marketing. We raised like $1.4 million a year that I was on that. Since graduating, I actually have 4 kids. I don't have a new family photo yet since our son has been born, at least not one that doesn't look like a selfie where my arm is super stretched out and one of my kids doesn't fit in, because we now have 4. So those are my oldest 3 children. But also, again, thinking like motivation, and as you guys are talking about, how do you stay consistent in things? This is something, I've got a couple of book recommendations sitting here right next to me. I'm excited to share, but I'm a huge believer in just like routine and discipline. Some of you may have heard me either at, I don't know if you're at Lead Portland, or I've also done a couple of our webinars here with Shanda over the last couple of years as the pandemic has happened. but just love talking about discipline and routine, because to me that sets us up for success and motivation. So I've been able to complete multiple marathons, half marathons, even completed a half Ironman triathlon, and just like love, keeping myself motivated to do things. So it's maybe you can tell, something I'm really passionate about and love talking about. So I'm excited for the next, what do we have now? 48 minutes left in this conversation, but I'll stop talking for a few minutes and let Nick tell you about who he is if you don't already know.
I love that. And the fact that you specifically called out my arm reaching selfie family photo. Thanks, Austin.
As I said that, I thought about that. And then what do you think? I cut my children out. Your whole family fit in. So it's totally normal to do. But my kids don't fit in the picture anymore.
I love that. I love that. Okay, everyone. I am Nick Rizzi. It is fantastic to meet you. I graduated from the University of Denver in 2014 and initiated into Alpha Nu in 2010. During that time, it was quite a journey that resulted in me being nominated and selected as the 2014 National Koi. And at the end of that time, I had been, as Austin alluded to earlier, I had received about 13 job offers when I graduated, allowing me to kind of pick the one that I wanted versus the one that I had to. A lot of that and a lot of the speaking that I do is on networking and how to make those connections. During that time, or since that time, I should say, I went through what it sounds like some of you have been through. I got horribly demotivated during the pandemic, or actually even leading up to it. I had been in a job that had just started to get a little stale to me. Ended up changing jobs January 28th, 2020, which was really good timing. And that job essentially shut down, and I was the low man on the totem pole during the pandemic, forcing me to find an alternative plan, we'll call it. I ended up getting fired in August of 2020. It was not working out in any sense, and applying to 49 new jobs. I had about 18 interviews, which was kind of crazy. Actually, I think it was 59 new jobs, 18 interviews, and decided at the end of that, I'm done. I don't want to do any of this. None of that found it to be motivating. I wasn't excited for any of the roles that I was looking towards. And I ended up going out and creating my own job. So I opened up my wood shop at the end of 2020, and started taking the real estate licensing exam since then, and became a realtor early last year. I just closed on my 6th transaction yesterday, and my 7th is hopefully tomorrow. And it's awesome. I feel like I finally found my place in the world, and I'm doing the most volume by any new agent in the last 6 years out of my office, which I'm really stoked about. Really enough about us, though. We're sharing that because sounds like we're all going through something similar. We don't all do the same thing. We've got some alumni on the call. We've got some collegiates on the call, but we're all really in the same position. Maybe we're a little stuck at work. Maybe it's just too much and not worth it to go through these online classes that when we haven't, been in person or been moving or lost our routine since then. I think we're all in very similar spots, and I just wanted to share those because there's a light at the end of the tunnel. We're going to talk about the steps that you can take tonight to get there, or at least start facilitating the train ride towards it. Really, at the end of the day, Austin and I believe that there's 3 core pieces of motivation. People fit into one of the 3 categories: passion, fear, or reward-based motivation. There is science backing this. So it's really, I shouldn't say it's just our belief. There is science backing these as well. And we're going to talk about what that means tonight. But it's important to identify what that is, because you may utilize multiple engines of motivation. You may really fall into one. You may be talking to someone who doesn't fit in that at all. If you're familiar with the book, The 5 Love Languages, that might have come up. It's a fantastic read for relationships, by the way. It also applies to business, and this is kind of a piece of that. You have to be able to speak to somebody's motivating factor, including yourself. Our very first one is finding your passion. Now, this one's really hard because I don't know many alumni, and I almost said adults in quotes. I'm always looking to whoever's more adultier than me, so I will never become one of those. I don't know many people who know their passion. This is arguably the hardest question you will ever answer in your entire life, and I think this is incredibly difficult to find. but it's an important factor on the motivating train because we get sold this story of finding your dream job and that's what you're going to go do right after school. And it's typically not the case. You have to discover what that is. Most of us don't know what our dream job is. I don't think anyone went to growing up when they were 6 saying my favorite dinosaur is a stegosaurus and I'm really excited to be a revenue manager. Like if you had told me that, absolutely not. Although my favorite dinosaur is the stegosaurus and that absolutely counted. Never thought I was going to do sales, never had any interest in it. It's just, the point is you don't have to know your passion. What you do need to know is what gets you excited, and you have to be able to pay attention to what excites others. Our fraternity is an amazing example because we do not operate like a club. This is a business organization that you have to apply to, take a test for, and get accepted into. It's not just some club that you can show up willy-nilly about an interest subject that might be fun. And we don't want it to be. So it makes it easier because you know we all at least have a basis. Now, some people, that doesn't mean you've got a high performing chapter right off the bat because it's there. Some people might really love the community service aspect and tolerate the professional events or chapter. Some people might be here for the social aspect, and that is a-okay, and everything else is just, I'll tick that box as we get there and we'll show up. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But our fraternity gives us a common ground and a common passion point to lean on. At the end, at least in our organization, meeting brothers is typically a passionate point, making friends. It's a really good spot to make very close relationships. And a lot of us have even found significant others through the fraternity, which is awesome on so many fronts. The finding your passion is not about knowing it. It's just about that self-discovery. And I think the biggest point here is experimentation. And when you're looking for that engine, when you're looking for whether it's in others or for yourself, try a lot and reflect often. And I think that's going to really help you direct that spot, because when you're going through and in my own life, when I was president, I didn't really want to be president of my chapter. That wasn't what excited me. I wasn't like, great, I'm in charge. That didn't do it for me. What I did like was the attention. I liked the public speaking, and I really liked the idea of building some sort of legacy, building something. We only had 9 people when I initiated. That was including my 2-person pledge class. And it was a very small chapter when we started. And what really got me excited during my first 18 months as a Delta Sig was the idea that this could be something big. We had a lot of really incredible people in the chapter itself, and I loved spending time with these people. So I just kept pulling that thread, and it just so happened the easiest way to spend time with some of the upperclassmen that I wanted to hang out with was to run for an executive position and sit in on those conversations and start helping some of those plans. And that allowed for a lot of further self-discovery. So I say that because you don't need to jump in immediately with, I don't want to be president because I have no urge to be president, or senior vice president because I don't want to do recruitment, or whatever else. Like, you just need to find some little bit and then some vehicle that lets you expand. And that expansion, that experimentation, is what's really going to help build the momentum farther down as you get more and more excited. Okay, there's 2 other engines though, so let me pass that off to Austin so we can talk about that.
There are, and they, as you might have guessed, are almost the opposite end of passion, because it's already been talked about as we kind of introduced ourselves and talked about why we're here tonight. You will 100% find yourself in situations, either in your personal life or your professional life, where passion is very hard to come by. But things still have to get done. Like, for me, the best example of not feeling motivated or passionate about something in college would be finite math. Like, any math class that I had to take to get my business major, I was not passionate about, so it was hard to get motivated. So then you kind of fall into a couple of other categories. You either have to motivate yourself with fear or rewards, or said another way, if you want to go to the next slide there, Nick, we always also know this as the carrot or the stick. This is, again, not probably a new method of motivation that you have heard, but it's really important that I think maybe shift the perspective on them a little bit and dive into a little more context. So fear itself, in my opinion, is not necessarily a bad thing or a bad way to motivate. What you want to be careful of is the level of fear that you're experiencing and what the source of that fear is. So if you are constantly fearful of like losing your job because of the way that your manager, we lost our slides there, Nick. There we go. Of how your manager manages, and just think that you may all like someday walk in and lose your job because they're just a hothead, or you feel like there is, no chance that you will be able to, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a situation in college where you may be that scared of something because a class always ends. You can usually take it with a different professor if it's a terrible semester for a class. Like if you just know the professor is going to fail you and you're just like living in fear of that the entire time, that's not necessarily healthy. You don't want to be in that sustained system of fear because that could truly be detrimental to your health. So the hope would be that in most of those situations, you're able to flip the perspective in which you are experiencing that fear. And it's called protection motivation. So the idea being that this is going to be a short-term challenge for me. I'm going to have to learn something new, devise some plan to get through this difficult situation. I'm going to accomplish it. And when I look back, I'm going to find out that I'm better for it. So you could still be like fearful of it, but what you really want to move towards is trying to think about protecting yourself from the negative outcome, from having to take that class for a second semester. Like that legit was me in both finite and calculus at IU. Those are the only 2 math classes I had to take. And I think I got like C's in both of them, which I was so grateful for that I didn't have to take them again. So there's the protection motivation. There's also thinking about it like you could have truthfully a fear of missing out as you protect yourself from not getting an opportunity that you want. It may be getting executive leadership role in your chapter. In your workplace, it may be getting a promotion. But the only way that you overcome the fear of missing out on that opportunity is by forcing yourself to learn a new skill. There's a great concept in a book we'll talk about by James Clear called Atomic Habits. And it's called the Goldilocks theory, which basically says that we need to find a place when we're pushing ourselves for things that's not too difficult, but not too easy. It's just right. So when you think about protection motivation, it's finding some way to motivate yourself by pushing yourself just enough that you know you're going to get that new skill and you're going to work through and hopefully obtain that opportunity that you don't want to miss out on. So outside of fear, then obviously there's the better side of things, which could be rewards. But rewards don't necessarily have to be like I think in the workplace, a lot of people are motivated by the fact that they can hit their incentive, their bonus incentive. It's like, well, great. If I get to this number, then I get a 10% bonus. If I get to this number, I get a 20% bonus. And you can very quickly do the math to be motivated by the reward of a monetary compensation by your employer, which is fantastic. But there are also things as you're a leader, maybe for your project at school, you can't tell them like, well, if we all get A's, then the school is going to give us each $1,000, because that's not how college works. Unfortunately, you get to go and lose all of your money while getting a degree instead of vice versa. But you could use something like affiliation motivation, which we'll talk about a little bit. Affiliation motivation is just people having the opportunity to be affiliated with something. And Nick kind of touched on this. He was motivated by being affiliated with those upperclassmen and being a part of those bigger conversations about the chapter. It may be the case that in the workplace, you maybe want to have the opportunity to be in more in-depth conversations about your business and where the business is going. So you find some way to affiliate yourself with that group. You're motivated by that reward of being affiliated with it. There's also a power motivation. If you are managing a group or you're part of a group in a team at school, I know at IU, we have a huge class our junior year that's called I-Core, integrated core. So it's the only thing you do for the semester, but you take an ops, a finance, a marketing, and I forget what the fourth class was. And then you write a business plan as a team at the end of the semester, and everybody's kind of a different major, so they can contribute a little bit. But you definitely have strong personalities as you're going through trying to solve these problems. So if you see that and you see someone who's maybe a little power hungry, then you can help motivate them by allowing them to delegate, allowing them to know that they're using their strengths as, a leader, as somebody who wants to be at the top, because it's going to keep the rest of your team on track and help you all accomplish your goal as a unit, because that's what's going to happen a lot of times in your full-time job. So fear and rewards can, hopefully not something that you're truly afraid of, but you flip it on its head to try to protect yourself against that bad thing by learning something new, or again, finding alternate ways to reward yourself, because we'll talk about a few personal ways to do it later on when we get into some of our strategies. It won't always be monetary, and we all have the opportunity to pay people to do things for us or don't necessarily want to. But these are the kind of the second and third engines of ways that we'll start to talk about how we can motivate ourselves and keep others motivated.
Fantastic. Thank you, Austin. Now, as far as how to make that happen, the big question, a lot of that comes down to crafting the message, crafting clarity around the objective that we need to meet. Now, this is a really big deal, especially for some of us on the call. We talked about motivating a team if they have a different agenda, especially, and consistency after the job or the task is done, like just continuing moving it forward. I believe those are derived from the message that you're creating. So it's really important to craft clarity around the objective and why you even need that motivation. Because if you're just saying, like, I got to get motivated, it's not going to come. That has to come from one of those engines that we talked about, which is all internal. So your mind needs to know. Now, a couple of pieces here. There's a couple of major companies that we're probably really familiar with. I recognize some of the collegiates were probably not alive for this first slogan, but alumni, do you remember Apple saying it does more, costs less? It's that simple. I mean, that was their slogan. Every commercial, every print, every ad, every school that they went to, it does more, it costs less. It's that simple. And that's how they started to take market share from Microsoft. Now, of course, Apple, you have to sell your kidney to afford any one of their products. But back in the day, this was how they competed against PC. 3 sentences, does more, it costs less. It's that simple. Over and over and over. Allstate, you're in good hands. Does that even convey anything about insurance? Like, no, but the message was, you can trust us. You're in good hands with Allstate. Use us for your insurance company and we will take care of you. They didn't need to say, we sell insurance. It's really great. It's high end. It's very cheap. It's inexpensive. There's a gecko selling it. No, you're in good hands. And that's it. Verizon's over and over. Can you hear me now? Good. Can you hear me now? Good. It was very simple messaging relating to their core purpose. A lot of this is derived from a very popular author and TEDx speaker named Simon Sinek. We've got more books for you, but if you haven't read Start With Why, I would absolutely recommend this. When we're talking about motivation, it should be your blueprint. Or if you want a cheat sheet, because I know there's a lot of reading already happening in school, just go watch his 18-minute TED Talk. It's very interesting. But Simon Sinek, S-I-N-E-K, he developed the why principle. I think it's 98.9, just shy of 99% of companies develop their structure top down. And that means that they're creating some situation where they're like, we want to make a ton of money. Great. We're going to sell widgets. Great. We're going to hire a lot of marketing and do $1 million in online ads to sell our widgets. It's built very structurally inefficient. And every objective, every action is driven by the previous objective of, we just want to make a lot of money. Well, that's not super helpful. Money's great. We need it to survive. That's not a core motivating factor. And I think these 3 companies, which are now some of the largest companies in America, are a great highlight of that. They don't focus on the Allstate's insurance. They don't focus on what they're providing in their messaging. They focus on the feeling you get. Insurance is scary and we will take care of you. And Verizon, largest coverage in the United States, I don't even think that's true anymore. That's just on all of their ads, and it's driven into our memory banks because they ran 10 years worth of messaging that just said, can you hear me now? Good. From this guy in a cave and underwater and in space. Verizon had coverage everywhere. It was a very simplified, clear message that got drilled into our hearts and souls. That's very believable, whether it's true or not. And that's a really big piece that you can draw from. So when you're creating what you need motivation around, I want you to use Simon Sinek's principles of inside out. And that's exactly what this circle represents. The inside is your why. What is your purpose? Is it, it's not, I want to get an A in my class, or it's not, I want to do a good job at work. You're there because of some other reason that you need to define. Maybe you have big goals or big dreams that you want to achieve in school, and that's why you're at school, and that's why you need to do well in this class. Maybe you didn't know what you want to do, but you're determined to find out what your passion point is. And the easiest way to keep trying new things is to make sure you pass that finite math class and not have to take it again, so you can move on to the next thing, because that's not a passion point. That's not something that interests you. You have to figure out what your purpose is behind the objective. And that's okay to start with that objective you want done. All of us are going to have that task list, but create a purpose, a higher purpose behind it. From there, you're going to want to decide the process. What's the how of executing that purpose? And at the end, you're going to have your what, the outcome, where that purpose gets executed and completed. Now, for me in real estate, and this is still a work in progress, but my Allstate motto, my simple motto is I help create happy homes and sell homes for happy prices. And I'm trying to keep that simple. I'm trying to keep it conveyed, and I'm trying to express my purpose from there. Because for me, I love going to work and doing this because it's exciting. It's scary. A lot of my buyers don't know what the heck is going on or what a lot of this stuff means, and they're looking for guidance. And I love being the person that helps put them into their dream home, or the step before, or where they're going to start their family. Like, there's so much meaning behind these homes, and that's what I get my excitement, my passion from. So the I help create happy homes is all about placing people into that happy home and making that as exciting and easy as possible. And selling the home for happy prices, I still wanted to convey my purpose of the positive feelings and making that a good experience, and address the fact that people want to make money on their house. So if you've got any feedback on it, I'd love throw that in the chat. But I built my business, and I'm building my business around that. I help create happy homes and sell for happy prices, because I feel like it defines this Cynic's model of inside out and crafting clarity around your motivation. Everything that I do, every purchase that I make, every phone call, every meeting that I take is driven by this message, where if doing so doesn't make me happy, doesn't help my customers, help my clients hit their goals, I'm not going to do it.
But how did you come up with that vision to know what your why and your purpose was?
Oh man, that is such a great question, Austin, and a really hard one too. I think this is why I love that passion slide and trial and error, because I don't think this is my end game. I think this is something I'm going to do for a very long time. But through the years of trying multiple things, high school, college, jobs, I had several jobs in high school, through college, and then one big career where I held a bunch of different hats after college. I ended up creating a list during the pandemic after I was fired, and in a very low place. I'd never been fired. I did a very good job at everything that I did. So when I was fired, and then we had to get legal involved, it was a whole big thing. I ended up having to sit down and say, this is absolutely ridiculous. I had a great network. I thought I could go anywhere, but because I did sales and most of my network was sales, pandemic shut it all down. So I ended up sitting down literally with a pad and paper, and I went through every job and every volunteer role that I had ever had, and I wrote down what I liked from it. And overwhelmingly in that list, talking to people was the number one thing that came up. The number two was solving problems. And the number three was having a relationship throughout that process. I really loved, I did a lot of repeat business when I did tech sales, more so than anyone else in the company. And I didn't realize it until after I left that's because that ended up being a passion point, since I got a lot of enjoyment out of just calling up my clients and asking how their day was. So I listed everything out, which was only possible because of experimentation, and pulled out that main piece that I loved, and then made that on a column. And I tried to work backwards. What roles, what jobs have these pieces that I love involved. And real estate kept coming up. I ended up having a lot of realtors in my life. And before I even took this path, I interviewed 32 realtors just to learn their story, how they got started and what's happening. Because that's who I am. I wanted to make those
You're a
connections. I wanted to
machine.
get that
It's
started.
ridiculous.
Yeah. And it was a long process. Like this happened. August is when I got fired. November is when I bought the test. November to June or to February was the interviews. And then I didn't even start on those classes, even though I knew I wanted this. I didn't even start on those classes until we found out we were pregnant. And talk about fear-based motivation.
There you go.
I was like, I know from, and fear-based works well for me. I know it takes 6 to 8 months to get started in real estate, and this baby is 8.5 months away. So, Austin, that worked for me, man.
Gotta light a fire. There you go. That's awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Try this. And has anyone here, raise your hand on the chat or chime in. Has anyone here used a vision board before? No? Okay. If you haven't, I really recommend it. Vision boards are exciting. They're purposeful, but they're great when it comes to creating that clarity. This is also important because we talked about that consistency after it's done, continuing motivation. And a lot of that comes from routine. The way that I love to use my vision boards, and I'm being so hypocritical right now because I haven't done my 2022 one yet. I need to hurry up and get this set. I usually have them done by Christmas. The way that I use them though, is it doesn't have to be a big collage. It doesn't have to be a project. I am not super artsy when it comes to that. I'll like just write some big words and put a couple of big Google images. I don't go nearly as in depth as some of those around me that do, but I use it with consistency, and that helps maintain that routine, helps maintain the motivation. I will make them every year, and every single morning I will look at my board. Doesn't matter what we're doing. If I'm on vacation, I have a picture of it that I look at on my phone, and I do that because I set these goals for a reason. They related back to the purpose that I defined, even if it's not exciting at the time, like just passing your class or just getting through the workday. They were something that I cared about, at least at some point. And that's okay if it changed. But the act of looking at it every single day, reviewing it and reminding myself what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, is incredibly empowering. And that will help set you up for success at the beginning of the day, leading out through the rest. They don't need to be much. They just need to be a reminder of the purpose that you defined at the time, even if it's changing. It's something that's yours, and that's why they're so important. So I highly recommend it. If you really want to take it down to the bare bones, write a couple of phrases on a note card and tape it to your bathroom. We'll do that too, and it could be as much as just positive affirmations. You know, I can do this. I am strong. I'm resilient. Whatever you identify with, pick 3 or 4 traits, write them down, and put them on your bathroom window mirror if you really want to kind of do the bare minimum. But love these as an incredible tool that you could use. Okay, Austin, what's the plan?
It's the plan, man. Okay, so you've got a vision. You've sat down. You've figured out why you want to do something, and this, truthfully, is where we kind of have to do divergent paths, where it's either for your own personal motivation or for a group motivation. You know, if you're in a group at school, if you're on a team at work, whatever the case may be, you've got to have, I think, the best way to stay motivated and to move a team and a group in the same direction is to have a shared vision with one another. So to map out a plan, you've got to either have self buy-in, it may be chapter buy-in if you're trying to get your chapter to do something, or it's going to be team buy-in with whatever team you're on. Again, whether it's a school project or a work project, an organization that you volunteer for. So one way that is amazing to be a leader and kind of put you whether or not you want to be will be to speak up if you're in a group setting and try to have dialogue and create very specific open discussion about where do we want to go. The vision and the why is where you've got to start. And that, if that's not discussed, if there's not communication about it, even if it's your own internal dialogue, as Nick was talking about, like as you talk about discipline and routine, figuring out what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you want to get better at, it usually takes a pretty solid amount of self-awareness to be able to acknowledge maybe deficiencies or opportunities for yourself, however you want to look at them, glass half empty, glass half full. But from there, once you know where you're trying to finish, the best way that I have found to stay motivated, and as I work on teams at work, or as I was on projects at school, especially with I-Corps, like I was talking about, working backwards to me is usually the best way to help people stay motivated, because it allows you to do two things. One, you can set realistic timelines. And with that, maybe it's like 1A as the second point, you have milestones of exactly when it is you're trying to hit things. So if you know that the end goal is your finished project, then you back into, okay, well, the finished paper has to be due here. We should have a draft of it this, but to get the draft, we need these 4 different sections done. We're going to divvy these 4 sections up amongst these people. You should give yourself, 3 weeks to write the paper. We need 1 week each to do the surveys for our particular thing. Like, there are all these different steps that go into building out an entire project. And for me personally, anyway, with self-motivation, as I think about how am I able to train for half marathons, triathlons, whatever it is, like if I have a training plan that I can follow, I'm confident that I'm going to get to the finish line. It may not be in the time that I want to. In my half Ironman, I finished on I was really thirsty on the bike. I drank a ton of water, like with a mile to go on 56-mile bike. And then I had to go run a half marathon. And the first part of the half marathon was a big downhill. So I just let my legs carry me. And I was doing probably 6-minute miles just because it was downhill, but I had a stomach full of water. So imagine what happened when I started going uphill. Terrible side stitch that made me walk for like 15 minutes. And it ticked me off because I missed my goal time by about 15 minutes. So having a plan, though, I knew that I was going to be at least in enough physical shape that I was going to get that project done. The third bullet point here is you talk about the spine sweat experience. This is my entrepreneurship major at IU. They call it the spine sweat experience because they pretty much guarantee on your final presentation, which we'll get to, you will have spine running down or sweat running down the spine on your back. And I certainly did, which I kind of laughed in my mind as it was happening. But the spine sweat experience was literally created as Shark Tank before Shark Tank was a TV show. So you go into your entrepreneurship major, your final semester, and all you have to do, quote unquote, is write a business plan from scratch. You then pitch that business plan to a panel of 4 venture capitalists or very wealthy donor alumni who are successful businessmen. And those 4 individuals decide whether or not you pass or fail the course. If you fail, you have to take a remediation course over the summer. So you don't actually get to graduate until like summer session is over. If you pass, they each agree that they will give you $1,000 out of their pocket. So one instance where finally in school, you do get paid to do well in school. So I had a class of 9 people, only 2 of us passed, and I was one of those 2 people to pass. But in order to do that, I sat down at the beginning of my semester that was 16 weeks long. And I knew that at least 2 weeks before, a week and a half, 2 weeks before my presentation, I needed everything to be done. So I was only focusing on practicing my presentation. So before that, I need to give myself like at least a week to build the deck and to work through it all. The paper needed to be done then, but the paper had multiple different parts. There was the marketing section, there were the financials, there was the regular sales plan, writing up what the product was going to be, how it was all going to work, all kinds of research that went into it, because I was proposing creating basically a rehearsal practice facility for music. So I had to look into like actual real estate that I could go buy. I had to do surveys of students at the music school. So I had to get at least 100 surveys for it to be statistically significant to try to find out pricing. So I had all of these benchmarks and I had expectations for myself that at a certain point, I would finish this section of the paper by this date, which meant that I wanted to give myself, say, 7 days to write that. So I knew I needed at least like to spend an hour every day working on that section. And these were the things that I did to walk backwards into how am I actually going to get to this point where I'm going to get paid to graduate. So know that having a plan is something that creates a lot of clarity for people. And it also just creates a sense of, which we'll get to, kind of accountability. Nobody has to guess what they're doing or feel like they don't have a part, because you're going to talk through it together and you're going to map out the plan, which gives people a sense of ownership because you're going to discuss it and figure it out. When you think about even, lost my video. Even if you're in a class that's maybe not as, as intense as a spine sweat experience, it may just be like a big thesis you have to write. I guarantee you, if you walk into office hours for a professor and you just say like, hey, I don't want to drop the ball on this. I don't want to write this with 2 weeks to go in the semester. Do you have an idea from students who have been successful in the past? What kind of benchmarks and milestones should I be hitting in order to get this paper written on time, to get this project done? Come in with some ideas. Like, I kind of see there's the 3 big sections, but I don't know exactly what needs to go into each of those. So could you give me some guidance so that I can start planning out my semester and making sure that I'm hitting these milestones for myself? So on the final day, I get to hand in my paper and be really confident in it. I guarantee you, if your professor has like any soul or heart, they're going to be like overjoyed that you would come to them and ask for that type of guidance, because more often than not, they have to deal with students who are making excuses about why they weren't able to get something finished and asking for extensions on deadlines. So just as an example, I would think about using something like that to help yourself stay motivated in school. Again, even if it's a class that maybe you're not crazy about taking, but give yourself the opportunity of having a plan so that it's easy for you to follow, because once you know where it is your next step should be going, I usually find that once I get that momentum happening, it's easier for me to stay motivated and get through that that project, I guess, using that what we call it, the avoidance motivation, where you just want to, or protection motivation, sorry, where you're protecting yourself from the negative outcome so that you can gain a new skill and move past it.
And Austin, I just want to add, because we put this in the chat, we talked about the blessing of motivation,
Yeah.
and that consistency. I do believe motivation can be a blessing. There are people who wake up every day just ready to get it done. And then there are those of us who can feel that way after 6.5 cups of coffee or 2 shots of espresso straight to the gullet. And either one's okay. The point we're trying to convey here is that the end goal, the thing you want to achieve, what you want to feel motivated for, you don't have to wake up and do that every day and feel bad if you don't or whatever. You need to take the steps that help enable the execution of that idea, because it is work. And these littler steps, even just having an agenda that map out just that vision board, all pile up into achieving that goal that you're trying to set. So it really is work.
Yes, which I feel like would lead us segue perfectly into our really implementing motivation. Because you've got the plan, you've got you understand the engines, hopefully what's driving you. I don't know if you want to touch on anything here, Nick, or I can jump into the self-motivation. I know we're coming up on time too, and want to leave time for questions here at the end. But with self-motivation, I don't have bullet points here. I guess it's more so just ideas and examples of how, for me, I've been able to exercise motivation, or things that I've read about, ideas people have given. I mentioned, and I think I would say for Andrew, you talk about being consistent. There's Atomic Habits I mentioned by James Clear. I again speak regularly on the idea that we are designed for discipline, the importance of routine to our lives in order to help us pursue things that truly matter. That's a great book you got there, Nick. I've heard good things about it. So I would highly recommend Atomic Habits. I don't know, Nick, if while I'm talking, you want to drop book names in to the chat just for people to reference. I'll do the same for you if you have any others. But a book like this and creating routines is amazing for being consistent. Both Molly and Shannon, I think you talked about going to the gym. One of the things that I think is a wonderful idea comes from a guy named Jon Acuff. Another book that I would recommend for like goal setting, motivation, doing things is Finish by Jon Acuff. He has a series of books. It was like Start, Quitter, Do Over, Finish. I think he just had one called Soundtracks about overcoming like negative soundtracks in your head. He's a wonderful speaker and author, but one example that he gives about getting into good habits and routines, and it's gym specific as it is, or in this case, is that you do give yourself the option to quit or to not do it or to walk away from it for that day. But for the gym, as an example, you only get to choose not to do it after you have set your clothes out the night before, so you know what you're going to wear to the gym, after you have put your clothes on, after you have driven to the gym and walked in the door. At that point, you are allowed to turn around and say, nope, not today. But the truth is, if you do that, or maybe you just want to go outside and run, you have to lace up your shoes. You have to walk outside onto your front porch or your sidewalk or whatever it is. And once you've done that, you 100% have the right to say, not feeling it today. But I guarantee you, from my experience, if you go through the process of waking up, well, starting the night before, lay your clothes out, set your alarm, wake up to your alarm, put those clothes on and get out the door, you're not going to not do it. And that's where like you just have to set yourself set expectations for yourself. And this is where, for me personally, I like to use a reward system for myself to implement new habits. And this could be where you tell yourself, you know what, if I do this, maybe you do want to do something 6 days a week out of 7. It's like, all right, if I do this for 6 out of the 7 days that I want, call it Monday through Saturday, then on Sunday, I get to go and get my favorite ice cream wherever it is, and have somebody as an accountability partner who holds you to that. On the opposite end of the spectrum, maybe it's something where you use fear-based motivation for yourself. You say, like, you know what, I have to get this paper written. I need to work on it for 1 hour every day, 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. And if I don't do that, I'm going to tell my roommates that I'm buying dinner for all of them on Sunday. So you are afraid of having to buy dinner for your roommates, or if you're at work, maybe you have somebody, I've seen examples where you have a somebody that's like politically opposite than you. You're conservative, they're liberal, you're liberal, they're conservative, whatever. And you tell them, like, if I don't do this thing because you're my friend, I just disagree with you on politics, I'm going to give you $100 and you have to go donate it to your political party of choice. So like, if you're a really politically driven person and you fear another political campaign getting your money, then have somebody, hold you accountable to that extent. You get all kinds of creative ways to reward yourself, or, try to avoid some sort of fear depending on the season of life that you're in. But these are all things that to some extent or another, I use to try to create new habits in my life. I don't think I have any other specific examples here for creating motivation. I know we're now at, how many minutes do we have left? 7 minutes. So Nick, I'll let you jump and then we'll see if there are questions.
I love it. So now we've got hopefully an engine, or at least a way to identify those engines. We've got a way to start implementing via the mapping that Austin talked about, your vision board, something that helps give you an actual vehicle towards driving there. And now, how do we add that to others? Now, ideally, you're able to convey some of the things that we've talked about today. The number one that you absolutely have to do is set the goal, the purpose for your ship, because just saying I want to be a chapter of excellence is not going to make you a chapter of excellence. Do you want to be the best in the region? Do you want to be a shining light for your school itself? Do you want to get that promotion at work? You need to have the purpose, not just the objective to handle. And when you're conveying that to others, there are 2 major pieces that comes into. Number one, the biggest is energies. There's negative and positives, as you can see with my fancy little clip art. Negative energies you have to deal with immediately. You've probably heard the term fire fast, hire slow and fire fast. That is incredibly important in business. I myself have hired people. It took a while and had to fire them quickly. I am absolutely convinced that's why I got fired myself, because I was a negative drain at that time. It was a bad situation, and negative energies need to be addressed immediately. When it comes with your chapter or on work at your team, it's really important that you have a conversation addressing it. Is this coming from a personal issue? Is this coming from a problem with me? Or is this coming with the purpose that we bought into? I'm the Rocky Mountain Regional Vice President, and chapters have to submit the level to me at the beginning of the year, the level that they want to achieve, whether it's accredited or whether it's excellence. And they are not allowed to do that without the buy-in of their chapter. So that way we know that at least at the beginning of the year, the entire chapter agreed that they were going to go for excellence, not just the executive board. It helps you address those energies. And this also works both ways. When you've got a champion, somebody who's an absolute shining light, who wants to drive the energy of the team, who they can wake up, hey, let's get this done, guys. Or even if they can't wake up that way, and they're still incredibly talented at actually bringing the room up, those people need to be acknowledged, they need to be addressed, and they need to be given either credit or responsibility, whichever is more of their motivation. And it's important to keep them on your team, because that's how it spreads. It is 100% contagious. Energy, let me say this again, energy is 100% contagious. If it's negative and you're doing self-talk that's not a positive light, it's going to carry through in all your goals. If you're doing self-talk that is building yourself up, that's also going to carry through in your goals. This is one of those that are non-negotiable, because what you put out there is absolutely what will come back. And it's the biggest example of how you have to carry yourself. It's also really important too, when you're strictly talking about teams, make sure you share the spotlight. If you're president of your chapter it's really probably wasn't you. If you did your job, hopefully you didn't have to do anything, because the entirety of the executive team is who made the chapter so successful. You just had to make sure they stay on track. So careful, especially as you enter the workforce. Don't take credit for someone else's project. It not only will bring the energy down, it makes you look bad. It absolutely comes back around. Share the spotlight. If you did that, it's good to say thanks. Someone will acknowledge you. It'll come around. But absolutely make sure that the credit goes to the team that helped accomplish it, because if as a leader, it probably is you keeping them on track. They're the ones completing the objective itself. Does anyone have anything they want to share? Did anyone run into similar experiences or any other questions that we didn't address? I think we hit almost every bullet point, if not all of them. Does anyone feel like we didn't hit your topic that you wanted in the beginning? Now's a good time if you wanted to unmute and kick it back up. Or what did you like? What was your biggest takeaway tonight?
I would say if I could add one more thing, I forget who brought it up. It might've been Molly talking about getting motivated at work or being motivated with work. If there's an opportunity, I've been in that situation myself. To me, one way that I would always been able to move through those more dull periods and kind of find myself in a new position with work. Long story short, I've had 9 different titles and worked through now 4 different departments in the 10 years I've been with my company. Following any sort of curiosity that I had, whether it was about a new software or a new process, trying to learn something new so that I could get better at my job and offer that up as a solution to the company, was always at least rewarding and motivating for me. So I knew that I was gaining something personally, but also it ended up professionally helping me out, because I've now had like 2 or 3 jobs created specifically for me because I was developing skills that nobody else in the company currently had. And they're like, well, we'll just have you do it for us. So there comes great opportunity from that. If you can just like kind of find ways to be curious at work, if there's time, to take on kind of a little learning session about something. That's one way that I've been able to work through slower periods at work where I'm struggling with motivation to stay engaged.
Yeah, I love that, Austin. Thank you. And I'm a really big believer that motivation is just not something that you wake up and have or have to achieve or look at others who have it. It's just the act of really setting your purpose for that small thing. It doesn't have to be your life's passion, and executing the tasks to get it done, even if it's just as much as looking at your vision board. But it's just what builds every single day. The most motivated people you see in life, I guarantee, are the ones who take these steps every single day, no matter how hard it is, not people who can just finish what they need to finish or set out to achieve that day. It's baby steps. Anyone have any questions? Okay. Hey, thank you so much to Heather for staying on and Central Office for putting this on. Please take down our contact info. Austin and I would absolutely love to connect with you afterwards. We are always open and accessible, and we love to help people. Austin, what else do you want to add?
That's it. Appreciate you guys being here. Always open and happy to connect. If you guys have follow-up questions or just want to talk about anything business related, we'll be glad to connect.
Okay, everyone. Thank you.